The Galactic Confederation's sensors detected something unusual near the edge of the Rigel sector. A strange object was moving through space, unlike anything they had seen before. Commander Lee stood on the bridge of his ship, the Harmonious Accord, straightening his blue uniform as he prepared to meet whoever, or whatever, was approaching. "Commander, the unknown vessel is traveling below light speed," Officer Kim said, not looking away from the glowing display in front of her. Her fingers moved quickly across the control panel. "Our database has no record of this design." Lee nodded slowly. This was an important moment. First contact with a new species. The Confederation had done this many times before, always peacefully. They had a system. "Open all communication channels," he ordered. "Send our standard greeting." The crew worked quickly. The Harmonious Accord began transmitting the carefully designed first contact package. Simple math problems, then diagrams showing peaceful intentions. These signals had helped the Confederation welcome 12 different species into their community. There was no reason to think this time would be different. Inside the approaching vessel, a human warship called the Dauntless. The atmosphere was tense. Captain Park stood with his arms crossed, watching the main screen with narrow eyes. "The alien ship is transmitting something," reported his communications officer. "Strange patterns. Could be a code." Park frowned. Humanity had only recently ventured beyond their solar system after centuries of war. The Mars conflict had taught them harsh lessons about trust. When some colony leaders had broadcast peaceful messages, Earth forces had used those signals to locate and destroy them. "What's happening with their energy systems?" Park asked. Lieutenant Choi, his weapons officer, looked up from her station with concern. "Captain, their power levels are increasing. Their shields appear to be activating. They're adjusting course to intercept us." Park didn't hesitate. Humanity had survived because they never waited to be attacked first. "Deploy countermeasures," he ordered. "Target their communications and weapons first." The human response was precise and overwhelming. The Dauntless fired specialized electromagnetic pulses designed to disable enemy systems without completely destroying the ship. These were followed by targeted laser strikes at what human scanners identified as potential weapon locations. Commander Lee was thrown to the floor as the first wave hit the Harmonious Accord. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship. "We're losing communications," shouted an officer. "Hull breach on decks 3 through 7. Lee couldn't understand what was happening. Their scanners had shown no weapons on the approaching ship. They had only activated their greeting protocols and navigation shields, standard procedure for first contact. "Return fire," asked his second-in-command, helping Lee back to his feet. "No," Lee said firmly. "This must be a misunderstanding. Keep transmitting peace signals. Increase power to the translators." But it was too late. The humans, seeing the continued power fluctuations from the alien ship, interpreted this as preparation for another attack. The Dauntless launched a second wave of strikes, this time targeting what they believed were engine and weapon systems. The diplomatic vessel shuddered. Emergency force fields activated across multiple decks as the atmosphere vented into space. Medical teams rushed to help the injured crew members while damage control teams fought to keep the ship intact. "We need to retreat," Lee's second-in-command urged. "We're not equipped for combat." Lee nodded sadly. "Engage emergency jump. Get us back to Confederation space." The damaged Harmonious Accord limped away, using its remaining power to create a small jump portal. Before they vanished into safety, their sensors captured detailed scans of the human vessel, information that would soon reach the Confederation's leadership. On the Dauntless, Captain Park watched the alien ship disappear. "Did they just teleport?" asked Lieutenant Choi, staring at the empty space where the alien vessel had been. "Some kind of jump technology," Park replied. "Beyond anything we have. Send all sensor data back to Earth Command immediately." Park felt uneasy. The alien ship hadn't fought back with any real force. Either they were testing human responses, or something else was happening. Either way, humanity needed to prepare. 3 days later, The damaged Harmonious Accord arrived at the Confederation's central station. Commander Lee, still wearing bandages from his injuries, stood before the council, 12 representatives from the member species. The attack was unprovoked, he explained, while medical images of the injured crew appeared on large screens. We had only initiated standard greeting procedures when they opened fire. The council members watched in silence as footage from the ship's external cameras played. The human vessel's response seemed calculated and deliberate. "What do we know about these humans?" asked Counselor Murrah, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly. "Very little," admitted Intelligence Director CO. "Their ship technology is primitive compared to ours, but their weapons are surprisingly effective. Based on radiation readings, we believe they may have evolved on a high-radiation planet, which could explain their aggressive nature." The council chamber filled with concerned murmurs. "If they reached Confederation space," one member began. "If they attacked a diplomatic vessel without provocation," said another. Head Counselor June raised his hand for silence. "In all our history, we have never encountered a species that responded to peaceful contact with immediate violence. These humans represent something new and dangerous." The vote took less than an hour. The decision was unanimous. The humans were to be contained. The Confederation's defense fleet would deploy to ensure this aggressive species couldn't threaten the peace they had maintained for generations. Meanwhile, on Earth, the United Defense Council reviewed Captain Park's report. General Huan pointed to the energy readings from the alien ship. "The pattern matches weapon charging sequences we've seen before," she noted. "Captain Park acted according to our first contact protocols. When an unknown vessel powers up what appear to be weapons, we don't wait to see their intentions." The council nodded in agreement. Humanity had learned through centuries of conflict that hesitation often meant destruction. "We need to prepare," said Council President Ju. "If these aliens return, they won't be coming to talk." Neither side understood how completely they had misread the other. The peaceful greeting interpreted as a threat. A defensive shield seen as weapon preparation. And now, both civilizations prepared for war, each believing they were protecting themselves from a dangerous aggressor. Admiral Song paced the shining bridge of the Celestial Guardian. The massive flagship of the Confederation fleet hummed with activity as officers prepared for what many feared might be the first real conflict in over 300 years. "Display the damage report again," Song ordered, his voice calm despite the gravity of the situation. A 3-dimensional image appeared, showing the Harmonious Accord's shattered hull. 23 crew members had died. 47 more were injured. The diplomatic vessel had barely made it back to Confederation space. "I want every captain to understand what we're facing," Song said to the gathered commanders. Their faces appeared on screens around the bridge, representing the 50 vessels now assembled. The diplomatic mission was attacked without warning or reason. "These humans show a level of aggression we haven't encountered in thousands of years." The captains nodded solemnly. Most had never fired their weapons outside of training exercises. The Confederation had enjoyed peace for so long that many questioned if a military was even necessary. Now they had their answer. "Our mission is containment, not destruction," Song continued. "We will establish a quarantine zone around human space. They must not be allowed to threaten other peaceful species." Captain Ryu of the cruiser Swift Justice raised her hand. "Admiral, what do we know about human capabilities?" "Their technology is less advanced than ours in most areas," Song replied. "Their ships are slower. Their shields are weaker. But," he paused, making sure everyone was paying attention, "their weapons are surprisingly effective, and they appear to have extensive combat experience. Do not underestimate them." Far away in Earth's orbital command center, General Han stood before the United Earth Command. The circular chamber was silent as the leaders of humanity's military forces reviewed the sensor data from the Dauntless incident. "As you can see," Han explained, pointing to energy pattern displays, "the alien vessel employed some kind of scanning technology that our systems interpreted as weapons targeting. When Captain Park detected what appeared to be shields activating, and the vessel changing course to intercept, he followed first contact protocols. Defense Minister Joe leaned forward. "And you're certain the alien ship was preparing to attack?" Han hesitated for only a moment. The energy signatures matched those we've seen in previous conflicts. Captain Park made the right call with the information available to him. The council members exchanged glances. Humanity had only recently developed faster than light travel. They had hoped their first encounter with alien life would be peaceful. Now, it seemed, they faced a potential threat from a technologically superior civilization. "What are your recommendations, General?" asked the council head. "We need more information, but we must also show strength," Han replied. "I suggest deploying the 7th Fleet to investigate further, while our other forces prepare defensive positions around our colonies." After brief discussion, the council reached agreement. The 7th Fleet will deploy immediately. Captain Yoon of the battleship Resolute will take command of the mission. Captain Yoon sat alone in her ready room aboard the Resolute, studying the communications data from the Dauntless incident. Something wasn't making sense. If the alien ship had been preparing to attack, why had they transmitted such complex, structured signals first? The door chimed, and Commander Kang entered, carrying a data tablet. "Captain, I've been analyzing the alien transmission patterns," she said, placing the tablet on Yoon's desk. "Something doesn't add up." Yoon looked up. "What do you mean?" Kang pointed to the signal patterns displayed on the screen. "These don't match any weapons targeting systems we've ever encountered. They're too complex, too patterned, almost like they're trying to communicate something." Yoon frowned, studying the wavelengths. "Could it have been a translation attempt?" "Possibly," Kang nodded. "I've been comparing them to known mathematical sequences. There are similarities to how we might try to establish communication with an unknown intelligence." This was troubling information. If the aliens had been attempting peaceful contact. "Keep this between us for now," Yoon said quietly. "We need more evidence before bringing this to Fleet Command." The Resolute led the 7th Fleet toward the coordinates where the first contact had occurred. 20 human warships, the best Earth could offer, moved in tight formation. They were under orders to investigate but avoid conflict if possible. "We're approaching the rendezvous point," announced Navigator Min. "Sensors are clear. No sign of alien vessels." Captain Yoon nodded. "Maintain alert status. Deploy sensor drones tow." "Captain," interrupted Tactical Officer Ba. "Multiple spatial distortions forming. Something's coming." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as ripples appeared in the blackness of space. Then, one by one, Confederation ships emerged from hyperspace. 50 vessels of various sizes, arranged in what appeared to be an attack formation. "They've surrounded us," Vey reported, his voice tight. "Energy readings indicate their weapons are powered and ready." Yoon's mind raced. The alien fleet outnumbered them more than 2 to 1. Their ships were larger, more advanced. If this was an ambush, the 7th Fleet might not survive. But something about the arrangement bothered her. It didn't look like an attack formation to her experienced eye, more like a standard patrol group spread out to cover maximum sensor range. Could this all be a misunderstanding? The signal patterns Commander Kang had identified suggested the possibility. "Open a communication channel," Yoon ordered. "Captain, their weapons are hot." Bod protested. "We should." "That's an order, Lieutenant," Yoon said firmly. "All ships, battle stations, but do not fire unless I give the command." Aboard the Celestial Guardian, Admiral Song was equally surprised by the human fleet's sudden appearance. "They must have some kind of stealth technology," his sensor officer suggested. "They weren't detected until they were practically on top of us." Song studied the human formation. It was tight, disciplined, clearly designed for combat. Had they come seeking revenge for being caught during their attack on the diplomatic vessel? "Sir, the human vessels are charging weapons," reported his tactical officer. Song's hand hovered over the command to engage. The Confederation fleet had the advantage in numbers and technology. They could end this threat now. But the admiral hesitated. The Confederation had never started a war. They had always sought peaceful solutions first. Open communications, he ordered instead. Let's see if they respond to reason. Before either leader could make contact, the two fleets drifted closer, each interpreting the other's movements as threatening. Weapons remained charged, targeting systems locked, as two civilizations stood at the edge of a war based entirely on misunderstanding. The tension between the two fleets grew with each passing moment. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Yoon watched as more Confederation ships appeared, their weapons glowing with energy. "They're moving to surround us completely," reported Officer Ba, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. "I count 53 alien vessels now." Commander Kang leaned close to Yoon's ear. "Captain, if they wanted to destroy us, they could have fired immediately. Something doesn't make sense." Yoon nodded slightly but kept her expression neutral for the crew's benefit. She had been trying to open communications, but either the aliens weren't receiving their signals or were choosing to ignore them. "Their lead vessel is changing position," Bai announced suddenly. "It's moving to block our retreat path." The massive Confederation flagship, nearly 3 times the size of the Resolute, shifted its position. To human eyes, trained by centuries of warfare, this looked like the classic opening move before an attack, cutting off escape routes. Yoon made her decision. "All ships, execute Maneuver Thunder. Target their propulsion systems only." The human fleet burst into action with practiced precision. The ships broke formation, scattering in seemingly random patterns that made them difficult to track. This was a tactic developed during Earth's orbital conflicts, unpredictable movements that confused targeting systems. Admiral Song was still attempting to configure the translator when the human ships suddenly scattered. "What are they doing?" he asked, confused by the chaotic movement. His question was answered seconds later when the first human strikes hit the Confederation's outer ships. Precise energy beams targeted engine sections and weapon emplacements with surgical accuracy. "They're attacking," shouted his second-in-command. "Return fire." Song hesitated for just a moment. This was not how he had wanted things to go. But now he had no choice. "All ships, defensive protocols. Disable the human vessels if possible." The space between the fleets lit up with energy beams and missile trails. The Confederation ships had superior firepower, but they quickly discovered something unexpected. The humans fought like no enemy they had ever encountered. "I can't lock on them," reported a frustrated weapons officer. "They keep changing course randomly." Another officer added, "Their targeting is impossibly precise. They're hitting our weak points specifically." Song watched in growing concern as the battle unfolded. The Confederation had the advantage in numbers and raw power, but the humans were fighting with a level of skill that suggested extensive combat experience. They moved together yet independently, adapting to each situation with remarkable speed. 3 Confederation cruisers had already lost propulsion and were floating helplessly. The humans hadn't destroyed any ships outright. They were disabling them systematically. "Sir," called his sensor officer, "the human flagship is approaching us directly." On the Resolute, Yoon had made a bold decision. While the rest of the human fleet engaged the outer ships, she directed her vessel straight toward the alien flagship. "This is too risky," warned Commander Kang. "Their main ship has enough firepower to destroy us several times over." "That's why they won't expect this," Yoon replied calmly. "Execute the Sunlight Maneuver." The Resolute suddenly accelerated to maximum speed, heading directly toward the Celestial Guardian. At the last possible moment, it performed a series of quick, precise movements that no ship of its size should have been capable of. "They're going to ram us," shouted a Confederation officer in panic. But the Resolute didn't ram the flagship. Instead, it executed a perfect roll that brought it alongside the much larger vessel in the blind spot of its main weapons. From this position, Yoon's crew fired precisely targeted shots that disabled the flagship's engines and main weapon systems without breaching its hull. The bridge of the Celestial Guardian shook violently. Emergency lights flashed as systems failed across the ship. "Engines offline. Main weapons disabled," reported an officer. Song steadied himself against his command chair. How? How do they get so close without being hit? On another deck of the flagship, Scientist Moon had been monitoring the battle with growing confusion. Unlike the military officers, he had been studying the human attack patterns with the scientist's eye. What he saw didn't match the report of bloodthirsty aggressors. "They're deliberately avoiding life support sections," he muttered to himself, analyzing the data. "They're disabling, not destroying." A realization struck him. These weren't the actions of an aggressive species intent on conquest. These were defensive tactics, precise, controlled, minimizing casualties. Before he could report his findings, the ship shook again. "They're boarding us," came the announcement over the ship's communication system. Captain Yoon led the boarding team herself. The human Marines moved through the alien ship in tight formation, weapons ready but set to non-lethal force. They expected resistance, perhaps even traps or ambushes. What they found instead were confused and frightened crew members who seemed untrained for combat. Many simply raised their hands in surrender when they saw the humans. "They're not even armed," whispered one of the Marines to Yoon. When they reached the bridge, Admiral Song stood tall, facing them with dignity rather than fear. "If you're going to execute me, human, do it quickly," he said, his words translated by a device one of his officers held. Yoon lowered her weapon slightly. "We're not here to execute anyone. We're here to find out why you attacked our diplomatic vessel." Song's expression changed to confusion. "Your diplomatic vessel? Your ship attacked our harmonious accord without provocation." Before Yoon could respond, Scientist Moon rushed onto the bridge, pushing past the guards. "Admiral, stop. I've analyzed their attack patterns. They've been deliberately avoiding casualties. These aren't the actions of an aggressive species." He turned to Yoon. "And your first ship, was it truly a diplomatic mission, or was it military?" "The Dauntless was a patrol vessel," Yoon answered carefully. "Captain Park reported that your ship activated weapons and moved to intercept." Moon's eyes widened. "We activated standard greeting protocols and navigation shields. Nothing more." A heavy silence fell over the bridge as both sides began to understand what had happened. "A misunderstanding," Yoon said finally. "All of this from a misunderstanding." The battle outside had already turned decisively in humanity's favor. Despite being outnumbered, the human ships had disabled more than half the Confederation fleet without destroying a single vessel. Their superior tactics and combat experience had overwhelmed the peaceful Confederation forces who had little actual battle experience. "Order all ships to cease fire," Song said into his communicator, his voice heavy with regret. "The same to our fleet," Yoon added, speaking into her own device. As the fighting stopped, the two leaders looked at each other with new understanding. They weren't facing bloodthirsty enemies, just another civilization trying to protect itself from a perceived threat. "We have much to discuss," Yoon said. Song nodded slowly. "And much to learn from each other, it seems." In the hours following the battle, human and Confederation teams worked side by side on the damaged flagship. The fighting had stopped, but trust was still fragile between the two species. Captain Yoon had ordered her best technical expert, Officer Ryu, to help restore the alien ship systems. Ryu sat at a Confederation computer terminal, her fingers moving quickly across the unfamiliar interface. A Confederation technician named Jay watched with cautious interest. "Your computing architecture is beautiful," Ryu commented as she navigated through damaged communication systems. "Much more elegant than ours." Jay nodded slightly. "Yet your ships outmaneuvered ours easily. How is this possible with inferior technology?" "Not inferior," Ryu corrected without looking up. "Different. Humans have been fighting each other for centuries. We've had to become good at it to survive." As Ryu repaired pathways in the communication system, she noticed something strange in the code. "This doesn't look right," she muttered, focusing on a section of programming. "These translation matrices have been altered. Altered? By whom? Asked Ja, moving closer to look. Ryu shook her head. I don't know, but these changes would corrupt any message passing through them. She pointed to specific sections. See here, and here. These would completely change the meaning of certain signal patterns. The discovery was serious enough to report immediately. Within an hour, Captain Yoon and Admiral Song stood watching as Ryu demonstrated what she had found. The original diplomatic signals sent by the Harmonious Accord would have been peaceful, she explained. But these modifications made them appear as targeting locks to our ships. Similarly, added Ja, your response would have been interpreted by our systems as an unprovoked attack. Admiral Song's expression darkened. Are you suggesting sabotage? Yes, Ryu answered firmly. And not just once. I found similar modifications throughout your communication systems, dating back months. Yoon looked troubled. Who would gain from starting a war between our civilizations? The answer came from an unexpected source. Scientist Moon had been digging through ancient Confederation archives since the fighting stopped. He entered the room holding a data tablet, his face pale. I believe I know who might be responsible, he said. The Naru. The Naru. Song looked confused. They'd been extinct for 1,000 years. Moon placed his tablet on the table, displaying images of an insectoid species with multiple limbs and large compound eyes. The Naru were predators who consumed other sentient species. They were the reason the Confederation formed originally, to stand against their expansion. You fought a war against them, Yoon asked. The longest war in our history, Song answered. After we defeated them, their remaining ships flowed into uncharted space. They were presumed dead after centuries of no contact. Moon continued, but look at the code alterations Officer Ryu found. They contain signature elements of Naru programming that our historians preserved. It's subtle, but unmistakable. The implications were chilling. If the Naru still existed and had been manipulating both humans and the Confederation, we need to establish secure communications, Yoon said decisively. Direct links between our leadership, bypassing the compromise systems. Over the next day, human and Confederation engineers created a new communication system immune to outside interference. For the first time, leaders from both sides could speak without fear of manipulation. In a tense meeting aboard the Celestial Guardian, representatives from both species gathered. Holographic displays showed evidence of the Naru interference. According to our historical records, explained Moon, the Naru strategy was always to weaken potential threats by making them fight each other. They would then consume the survivors. Consume? Asked Commander Kang, looking disturbed. Literally? Yes, Moon replied quietly. They evolved as predators and viewed other sentient species as prey. The Confederation Council appeared on large screens, having received the evidence. They looked troubled by this revelation. Even if this is true, said one council member, why should we trust humans? Their first instinct was violence. Our first instinct was self-defense, Yoon countered firmly. Just as yours would be. The difference is, we discovered the deception before either side was destroyed. The debate continued for hours. Human military commanders were equally skeptical about trusting aliens with advanced technology. But the evidence of Naru manipulation grew stronger with each system they checked. Finally, the Confederation Council reached a decision. We proposed a temporary alliance, announced the head counselor, to investigate this threat and neutralize it if necessary. Earth Command agreed. Captain Yoon would continue commanding the human forces, working alongside Admiral Song. Their first task was to locate the source of the Naru interference. Technical teams from both species worked day and night, tracing communication disruptions and signal anomalies. Officer Ryu and Ja led the effort, combining human ingenuity with Confederation technical knowledge. After 3 days of searching, they made a breakthrough. We've traced the signal source, Ryu reported to the command team. It's coming from the Proxima Nebula, about 2 light-years from here. The nebula would hide them from standard scans, Song noted. Perfect cover for monitoring our communications. Hume studied the star charts. We need to investigate, but carefully. If they are there, we don't want to alert them. A small joint mission was organized. One human ship, the scout vessel Swift, and one Confederation science vessel would approach the nebula using a combination of human stealth technology and Confederation sensor arrays. Lieutenant Ba volunteered to lead the human side of the mission. We'll stay on the edge of the nebula's radiation field, he explained during the briefing. The interference should help mask our approach. 2 days later, the small expedition returned with alarming news. Ba's face was grim as he reported to the combined command. They're there, he confirmed, activating a holographic display showing grainy images captured from inside the nebula. A fleet of at least 30 vessels, unlike anything we've seen before. The images showed ships with strange, organic-looking designs. They appeared to be made of overlapping plates of some dark material, with few visible lights or windows. Naru warships, Moon confirmed after studying the images. Their design hasn't changed much in 1,000 years. What are they doing? Asked Admiral Song. Waiting, Bay replied simply. Based on their positioning, they were preparing to move in once our fleets had weakened each other. They expected to find debris and damaged ships, not an intact fighting force. Yun and Song exchanged looks. The Naru had nearly succeeded in their plan, if not for the restraint shown by both sides and the careful investigation afterward. Both civilizations might already be facing extinction. We need to prepare, Yun said firmly. They won't wait forever once they realize their deception has failed. For the first time in its long history, the Confederation prepared for a deliberate offensive action. And for the first time, humans found themselves fighting alongside alien allies rather than against them. For 3 days, the combined human and Confederation fleet prepared for battle. Ships that had been firing at each other just days before now trained together, sharing tactics and technology. Humans taught Confederation crews about unpredictable combat maneuvers, while Confederation engineers helped improve human shields against Naru weapons. Captain Yoon stood on the bridge of the Resolute, looking at the tactical display. The plan was risky but necessary. The Naru had to be drawn out of the nebula where their advantage would be minimized. Are all ships in position? She asked. Yes, Captain, replied Officer Ba. Human and Confederation vessels are paired as planned. The decoy group is ready. Yoon nodded and opened a channel to Admiral Song on the repaired Celestial Guardian. Admiral, we're ready to begin. Understood, Captain, Song replied. His face showed both determination and concern. The Confederation hadn't fought a real battle in generations. May fortune favor us all. The first phase of the plan began with a small group of ships approaching the nebula, appearing damaged and vulnerable. These were the strongest vessels from both fleets, disguised to look weakened. They transmitted fake distress signals describing a devastating battle between humans and the Confederation. Deep within the radiation clouds, the Naru detected the approaching ships. Their commander, a scared veteran of the ancient war, studied the readings with compound eyes that reflected the light of multiple screens. The prey weakens itself as expected, he clicked to his lieutenants. Prepare to harvest both species. The Naru fleet moved slowly from the nebula, weapons charging. They expected to find easy targets, the remnants of 2 civilizations that had destroyed each other. What they found instead was a unified fleet waiting in attack formation. Naru vessels emerging from the nebula, announced Commander Kang on the Resolute's bridge. 32 ships detected. Their weapon systems are powering up. Captain Yoon took a deep breath. Everything depended on perfect timing now. All ships, she broadcast to the combined fleet, execute Plan Thunderstorm. The human and Confederation ships burst into action. They moved in patterns that seemed random to observers, but followed a complex dance that Yoon had designed with Admiral Song. The Naru fired their first volley, powerful energy beams that could cut through most shields. But the target ships weren't where they were supposed to be. The human vessels moved with unpredictable changes in speed and direction, while Confederation ships followed their lead, protected by their superior shields. "They're evading our targeting systems," reported a Naru weapons officer, mandibles clicking in frustration. The Naru commander leaned forward, studying the battle with growing concern. "What is happening? Their movements make no sense." What the Naru didn't understand was that humans had developed their combat tactics through centuries of fighting each other. Their movements weren't based on pure mathematics that could be predicted, but on instinct, deception, and creativity. "They adapt," observed the Naru commander to his lieutenant, as another volley missed the human ships. "They learn too quickly." The battle spread across the star system as smaller groups of ships engaged in running battles. Confederation vessels provided powerful shields and energy weapons, while human ships delivered precise strikes at weak points the Naru didn't know they had. Admiral Song watched from the Celestial Guardian with growing admiration. "The humans fight like nothing I've ever seen," he said to his officers, "not with just technology, but with imagination." The Naru began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. This wasn't the easy harvest they had expected. These combined forces fought with both technical skill and unpredictable tactics. Captain Yoon saw their moment of opportunity approaching. "Prepare for the Soul Maneuver," she ordered her crew. The Resolute suddenly broke from formation, appearing to suffer engine trouble. It drifted toward the Naru command ship, its flank exposed, a seemingly easy target. "The human flagship is vulnerable," the Naru tactical officer reported eagerly. "Shall we take it?" "Yes," the Naru commander ordered. "Bring us alongside. We will capture their leader alive for study." The massive Naru command ship adjusted course, moving to intercept the apparently crippled Resolute. It was a predator approaching wounded prey, exactly as Yoon had anticipated. "They're taking the bait," Bay reported, watching the tactical display closely. 10 seconds until optimal position. Yoon's face remained calm, but her knuckles were white as she gripped her command chair. "Signal the Celestial Guardian." "On my mark." The Naru command ship closed in on the Resolute, weapons locked on the exposed hull. "Now," Yoon ordered. The Resolute's damaged engines suddenly flared to full power. The ship executed a perfect roll away from the Naru vessel. At the same moment, the Celestial Guardian and 3 other Confederation cruisers emerged from hiding behind a nearby moon, catching the Naru flagship in a crossfire. Before the Naru could react, precision strikes from the human ships disabled their main weapons, while Confederation vessels used their superior shields to absorb return fire. "We're surrounded," shouted the Naru tactical officer. The Naru commander hissed in anger. For the first time in his long life, he felt fear. These weren't mindless prey fighting among themselves. They were united, adaptive, and unpredictable. The battle turned decisively against the Naru. Within hours, half their fleet was disabled or destroyed. The survivors retreated back into the nebula, pursued by faster human ships that harried their escape. In the aftermath, as the radiation clouds swallowed the last fleeing Naru vessels, Captain Yoon stood in the newly established Joint Command Center. Around her were officers from both human and Confederation ships, tired but victorious. "Today we achieved something remarkable," she said, her voice carrying across the quiet room. "Not just a military victory, but something far more important." She walked slowly around the circular table, making eye contact with each person present. "When our civilizations first met, we misunderstood each other completely. We nearly destroyed each other out of fear and suspicion. The Naru counted on this. They believed that different